So in this video we are continuing looking at life in modern Britain and looking at different types of identities and why it's important that we are tolerant. So to start with, what is culture? What does culture even mean? I want you to read the definition of the sherbet culture. See if you can work out who they are. Press pause and have a think. Okay, so the sherbet culture, they sounded a bit odd, but they're actually British culture. If you think of all those things they were doing, things like going to see the herbalist, that's prescriptions, the shrine to themselves is the bathroom, the scraping of skin is shaving. It just depends what perspective you're looking at it from. So everybody's culture does seem different and does seem odd. Just because we're British and that's our culture doesn't mean that it's not odd to people of other cultures. So just to reflect then, can you remember from last video what percentage of UK citizens were white British? And if you will remember, it's actually much higher than we think. Remember, this is the 2011 census. There will be one in 2021, although it's not likely that these statistics will have changed massively. And religion, we've looked at this as well. So nearly 60% of people considered themselves Christian. But the next one down is the most interesting one. 25% of people in this country have no religion. My guess is in the 2021 census that will go up further. And if we look at the actual practice in worship, actually far less percentage of Christians do practice their religion compared to Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus. Okay, something that you do need to be aware of is something called global identity. This came up as a 2-mark question in the 2019 exam. So a global identity means that you are British or whatever country you are from, but you have got connections with the rest of the world. So for example, you're interested in the World Cup, it's a World Cup, you're interested in foreign travel, you might listen to music from other countries, eat foreign food and so on. But it's also more than that. It's being aware of global matters, not just concerned with the UK and Britain. You might be involved in online activities that spread globally, so you might play an online game with someone from Australia and so on. Okay, using global trade and all those kind of things. So I'd like you to write a definition for your notes and give an example and just a bit more explanation of these kind of things. So you might be globally aware, you're conscious of global events or of global faiths and things. You've then got a sense of responsibility for bettering the world. You want it to be a better place. And then participation, so you can do something to change the world, for example recycling and things like that. Okay, so just reflecting on the bottom now again about multiculturalism within this country. Within multiculturalism, we have to have that level of tolerance, don't we? And you should know this from your RE work. And those words should all be relevant to you. You should know what they mean. There is a question on the bottom about the difference between prejudice and discrimination. We then look at what happens when we're not tolerant. So these are 2 case studies. The first one is of Stephen Lawrence, and this happened in 1993. This was a huge story. Stephen Lawrence was 18 years old. He was an A-level student. He got stabbed by a group of white youths, and it was a purely racist attack. They didn't know one another. Stephen certainly wasn't involved in any gangs or anything like that. It was purely racially motivated. The police were found to not have investigated the crime properly. They didn't carry through the normal checks and the regulations that they should have done. It led to a huge inquiry called the Macpherson Inquiry that found that the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist. The next story is of Anthony Walker. This is slightly later on. Again, a black British A-level student, very, very good boy, attacked with an axe just because of the fact he was black. So lots and lots of really horrible stories that we can go to when tolerance is not appreciated. And it doesn't just have to be physical attacks as well. Lots of people often say that they feel left out, they feel marginalised. There can be given racist insults, but it's not just that as well. It's the made to feel different, like the story here. And then we look at jobs. So the source on the board is from a BBC report, and it says that TUC, that's the Trade Union Congress, boss Brendan Barber called for tougher rules for private firms. And basically found that ethnic minority applicants still face major discrimination in the jobs market. This is an investigation that has been going on since the 1960s. They do it every few years, and basically what they do is they get different people to apply for jobs. So it'll be people with white names of white ethnicity, and then they'll give people with a black sounding name, an Asian sounding name, and very often they'll do it where the black and Asian people have actually got higher qualifications and more experience. And what they've found is that it is still the white candidates who are far more likely to be offered an interview than the black and Asian names. So what I would like you guys to do, imagine this is a 4-mark question. Use source A, and it says explain ways in which discrimination through ethnicity happens in the workplace and how this contradicts British values. So what you would do for this, you would do 1 paragraph explaining the source, say how that is showing discrimination in the workplace, and then talk about the British values that this contradicts. So remember, your British values that we would look at here would be mutual tolerance and respect. You could mention diversity. You could also talk about the rule of law as well, because the 2010 Equality Act makes it illegal for this to happen, but it's still happening. Okay, I'm going to put the link to this documentary in the notes. Please watch it. It's basically the experience of 3 people and how racism has affected them. So it's 3 people sort of as an undercover investigators. One of them actually dresses, well, she's a Muslim female, and she's wearing a covering, a head covering, and she walked through Sedgley. This is a nationwide show, and she walks through Sedgley and suffers racial abuse. So that's absolutely horrendous if you think we are based in Sedgley. Also, don't forget there's indirect racism as well, and you'll see that in the documentary. Hate crimes. So you need to know what that is. Again, that could come up as a 1-mark question. You can copy the link and have a look at the hate crime page on the government website. And it's basically criminal behaviour which is motivated by hostility towards the victim's disability, race, religion, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. So it is reported, it is a criminal offence, it will then get recorded and will be investigated. And if you have a look there, 83% can be led to a guilty plea or a conviction. So there are increased sentences, and if you look, you can actually go to prison for hate crimes. So have a quick look at that. Last thing to be aware of then is multiple identities. So we've spoken about identity before, your nationality identity. So, are you British or whatever, your class, working class, middle class, etc., gender and your ethnicity. However, you can have multiple identities within these. So for example, with your nationality, you could be born in Britain. However, you could actually play for the Welsh football team because you might be Welsh. With your class, you could, for example, have a middle class job like a teacher, but actually live in a working class area. Your gender, you could be born what's considered male with male anatomy, but identify as a female. And ethnicity, you could have a mixed ethnicity. And just to finish then, there is a 2-mark question, and it says, using an example, explain the term multiple identity. To get you 2 marks, you need to do the explanation and use an example. Good luck and thank you.